a headless body wrapped in a blood-stained carpet, a church abandoned to darkness and decay, and a sweater, hand-stitched with care, still embracing its cold, lifeless wearer. In 1983, St. Louis, Missouri became the stage for one of America's most disturbing unsolved murders. A little girl between 8 and 11 years old was found brutally decapitated, her head never recovered, her name never discovered. 4 decades later, she remains known only as St. Louis Jane Doe. This is her story, a story that demands to be told, a victim who deserves a name, and a killer who has yet to face justice. February 28, 1983. A man searching for scrap metal entered the abandoned St. Marcus Church on Clemens Avenue in St. Louis. As he navigated through the darkness using a flashlight, his beam fell upon something out of place, a rolled carpet. Curious, he nudged it with his foot, causing it to unroll slightly. What he discovered inside made him run for the nearest phone. Responding officers arrived to find the decapitated body of a young African-American girl. The crime scene told a story of calculated horror. Her body had been washed clean, eliminating valuable evidence, and her killer had taken her head, making identification nearly impossible. The medical examiner determined she had been killed just hours before discovery. She was young, between 8 and 11 years old, and wore only a yellow sweater with a floral pattern. This handmade garment would become crucial to the investigation, one of the few personal items connecting her to a life before violence. Toxicology reports showed no drugs in her system. There were no signs of sexual assault. The precision of the decapitation suggested the killer had anatomical knowledge or experience. Most disturbingly, investigators believed the child had been alive when the beheading began, indicating a level of cruelty that shocked even veteran detectives. The investigation immediately hit roadblocks. No missing person reports matched her description. No family came forward. The yellow sweater, carefully analyzed, was determined to be handmade from a pattern sold by Sears or Montgomery Ward. Thousands of these patterns had been sold nationwide, leaving investigators with a common item impossible to trace. Detectives canvassed neighborhoods, questioned potential witnesses, and circulated descriptions to schools across the region. The local community, horrified by the crime against a child, held vigils and raised reward money. But as days turned to weeks, the case grew cold, and the little girl remained nameless. The FBI joined the investigation, offering advanced forensic assistance. They analyzed carpet fibers, soil samples from the church, and the victim's clothing. In a bizarre and controversial decision that would later be considered one of the investigation's greatest mistakes, the St. Louis Police Department mailed the victim's sweater to a forensic lab for testing. Inexplicably, the sweater, the most crucial piece of evidence, was lost in the mail and never recovered. This catastrophic error eliminated any hope of using modern DNA testing on the garment, potentially erasing the child's last chance at identification. The loss represented more than evidence; it was the last thing that connected her to her life before becoming a statistic. With no family to claim her, the city of St. Louis stepped in to provide a proper burial. Police officers served as pallbearers, and community members who never knew her in life came to mourn her in death. She was laid to rest in Washington Park Cemetery under a simple marker, reading "Unknown Child." Homicide detective Ralph Baird, who led the initial investigation, later told reporters, "I've worked hundreds of homicides in my career, but this one haunts me the most. Somewhere she has a name. Somewhere someone knows what happened to her." The case file remained open, but with no new leads, it gradually collected dust on a shelf of unsolved murders. The advent of DNA technology in the 1990s offered new hope for cold cases nationwide. In 2000, investigators exhumed the remains of St. Louis Jane Doe to collect DNA samples. The genetic profile was entered into CODIS, the FBI's DNA database, but no matches were found. Without familial reference samples, the DNA alone couldn't provide her identity. Forensic artists created facial reconstructions, showing what she might have looked like in life, images that were distributed through new channels, including the internet and true crime television shows. Each new technology brought renewed interest but no breakthrough. Her case file moved from filing cabinet to digital database, from one generation of detectives to the next. By 2010, a new investigative tool emerged: genetic genealogy. This technique, which had helped identify the Golden State Killer and dozens of other Jane and John Does, offered a revolutionary approach. Rather than looking for direct DNA matches, investigators could now search for distant relatives and build family trees to narrow down possibilities. In 2018, the St. Louis Police Department partnered with genealogists to upload the Jane Doe's DNA profile to public databases. The process is painstaking, requiring countless hours of research through birth certificates, marriage licenses, and census records. For the first time in decades, there was genuine optimism that she might finally reclaim her name. While the search for her identity continued, investigators never stopped hunting for her killer. They explored connections to similar crimes across the Midwest, examining cases with comparable signatures or methodology. Several serial killers active in the region during that period were investigated, including Vernon Brown, who was executed in 2005 for murdering 2 girls in St. Louis. The proximity of his crimes and his known history of violence against children made him a person of interest, but nothing definitively linked him to the Jane Doe case. Other potential suspects emerged over the years, but without forensic evidence connecting them to the scene, charges could never be filed. Each year on February 28th, a small group gathers at Washington Park Cemetery to remember a child whose name they don't know. Former detectives stand alongside current investigators, community activists, and citizens who refuse to let her memory fade. They place flowers on her grave and renew their commitment to finding answers. The St. Louis Jane Doe case has become more than an unsolved murder. It represents the hundreds of unidentified children across America who died without names, without justice. Her case has influenced how evidence is handled, how unidentified remains are documented, and how communities respond to missing children, particularly children of color who historically received less media attention and fewer resources. Today, the St. Marcus Church, where she was found, no longer stands demolished like so many abandoned buildings in changing urban landscapes. The physical space that witnessed her final moments has been erased, but her story continues to resonate. Cold case detectives still receive tips and pursue leads. Advances in forensic technology offer new possibilities each year. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children maintains her case file and regularly updates her reconstructed image. Though justice seems increasingly unlikely, after nearly 4 decades, identification remains possible. Someone, somewhere, remembers a little girl who disappeared in the early 1980s, a child who loved her yellow sweater with a floral pattern. The St. Louis Jane Doe represents one of America's most heartbreaking cold cases, a child denied both her life and her identity. Her case reminds us why cold case units matter, why forensic science matters, why remembering the forgotten matters. The detective who found her that February day, now long retired, keeps her photo in his home. Until someone knows who she is, he says, she belongs to all of us. If you have information about this case, no matter how small it might seem, contact the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department or the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Time passes, but it's never too late for truth. It's never too late for a name. It's never too late for justice.